Okay, trying to be prompt here. Got it back on at 6 o'clock, so I'll keep kind of waffling on a bit until it gives everybody a chance to get online and join me on the call. I have got some questions that have been sent to me ahead of time. So here we've got some people starting to join in now. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll try and do a better job of really reading what's going on down here this time as well. Last time I was a bit distracted by everything that was going on, so thank you to everyone for joining me, giving me some waves here. That's great. So I've got some questions from last time that I didn't have time to carry on with. So the idea is that, saying hi from people there. Hi, David. And yeah, last time I didn't get a chance to answer all of the questions. And what I wanted to make sure I did this time is get through as many as I can. Any that I kind of don't get onto, can't fit in, because I'm going to keep this to 30 minutes again. I'm going to carry those over onto the next one, or try and do something in between this call and the next one to get the answer out there. But it's useful if I do get the questions ahead of time, actually, because it gives me a chance to try and put together some sort of image as well that perhaps will explain things better. So I think the system, what I'm going to try and do going forwards is the day of the live call, I'll post in my story that it's going to be live and you can ask me a question. And that's because then they last 24 hours and I can call them up on here. So as many as possible, I'm going to try and work that way. There's some that I lost because after 24 hours they disappear. But I have tried to create an image of those ones and display those on the screen. So I'll try and do that as best I can as well. But if they're actually submitted through the questions, then we should be able to get this working really well. So I just wanted to do this first, because if you do want to ask a question, rather than it coming up on the comments there, because that's really easy for me to miss, but there is the question facility. So I just press this button. So hopefully you can all see that. To ask a question, there's that little button down the bottom, something that looks something like that at your end. If you hit that, you can ask the question, it comes up, I can control it then and put it up on the screen so everyone can see it as well. So if you could use that, that would be a great help. If you do post comments, post questions in the comments, they might get lost because it is quite small for me to read that, and they keep scrolling. So there's the question facility there, it's banked, I can see it. And after the call's ended, if I haven't managed to get onto it, I can see it for 24 hours. I'm going to make sure I keep those and answer those as best I can. So I just want to make sure I get onto a question that was asked out of the call last time, because we've gone over a couple of minutes now, everyone's joining. So very quick one, kind of a bit of an off topic for strength and conditioning, but it's performance training. So let me just see if I can share that one. So Tiger Balm or the Thai oil, the Namman liniment, okay, the Muay Thai oil. So from what I can tell on that one, I've used Tiger Balm in the past. I tend to use the Thai oil, the Namman Muay. And I've actually published let me just put this up actually. So there's a little article that I did a while ago when Namman Muay actually moved to distributing in Europe as well. So that meant you didn't have to wait for it to come from Thailand. But I did a little article there on pre-fight massage and mentioned the oil, and there's lots of detail in there. So if you want to check that out, if you Google pre-fight massage scam or legit, then you're going to see that and you can read a bit more detail. But the main thing was, with massage oil, it allows you to do a massage. It's for covering bigger areas. That's really the purpose of the oil. If you're using something like Tiger Balm or even Namman Muay's cream, it's just a kind of concentrated version of it for sort of spot injuries, really. So both Tiger Balm and the cream from Namman Muay are good for injuries. The Thai oil is good for kind of pre-fight massage, pre-training if you're using that to kind of get yourself moving better, numbing any areas of stiffness and all that kind of stuff to make you move better for the rest of the session. So the oil and the creams have two different purposes, really. So pick your choice for that. I would say that the cream is better in injuries, the oil is better for massage. I'd say in terms of which one's better, personal preference, because I think actually the active ingredients are very, very similar. There's a few little differences, but the main key ingredients are pretty much the same between the two there. It comes down to personal preference. I personally, being a Thai boxer, love the smell of the Thai oil. That's something I posted in that article actually. In terms of an activation for mindset, the senses are really key in that, and the smell of Thai oil, as soon as I smell that, I'm thinking fight. It just reminds me of warming up for a fight. As soon as I smell it, even in training, you know, I'm thinking I'm warming up for a fight, and I'm up for it. So I really like the smell of that as compared to the Tiger Balm, which doesn't have that effect for me. So I just wanted to kind of mention that one, and let's see if we can get the next question up that I've had to do a snapshot of. So let me see. So this was one that I got that had to come outside of the question facility on Instagram Live here. So question would be, I could do 10 to 15 normal grip, palm towards me pull-ups, but when I do wide grip, palms away on the pull-up, I feel I'm getting a tear in my shoulder socket, and I'm able to do more. I've got some words over the top there. More than one at a time, I think that says underneath the comments. I've also noticed bad shoulder mobility in the shoulder socket in general. They're slightly rounded. Yeah, so this kind of stems from mobility in the shoulder. So if you struggle, you can't really see me in shot here, but if I struggle to get my arm out to the side and roll back there, if I'm laying flat on the floor and trying to do that, if I can't get my wrists back to the floor without sort of doing some weird things with my wrist and everything, the back of the hand and my wrist down to the floor, that kind of indicates that your external shoulder rotation is pretty tight, and that needs working on. If you're struggling in pull-ups with the arms out in that position, that's what it's doing. It's taking into external rotation at the shoulder, and if that's your limiting factor, that's going to give you problems. So that might not show up in your Muay Thai all the time, but it is something that will give you problems in the long term. So the other thing as well, if I just kind of go sideways on a little bit, if my thoracic spine is extended, that allows me to get my arm up easier. If I'm kind of rounded here, you can see how my shoulder comes forwards. It's harder to get my arms up overhead. So you've mentioned about being rounded forwards as well as kind of getting the shoulders to open up. It's working, perhaps without seeing you, on thoracic extension as well. So it's getting your upper back to kind of arch up rather than hunch forwards in that sort of kyphotic shape. So all stuff that you should be addressing in your supplemental training. So that's your strength and conditioning. So that's something to work on there. That will ultimately, if it's not what I'd refer to as a limiting factor now, could very much end up being one in terms of limiting your performance, but also perhaps an injury or breakdown later on, just because your body's not happy with that. If you can't do a pull-up, then yeah, that's kind of an indicator there's not enough range going on there. You could also try just like a dead hang, where you're hanging from the bar there for like 30 seconds on sets. That would help actually get you some mobility as well in there. But my recommendation for mobility, what I have in my programs are like a pec minor tack and stretch, I call it. So you're laying on a self-myofascial release ball, tennis ball or something like that, putting that into the pec minor, so that's just in that crease between the shoulder and the chest, and you're laying flat down on the floor there, and you're doing like what I call a handcuff and a salute. So salute to my ear, and then put my arm behind my back, and I'm just working that. So I work that for like at least 5 repetitions, and I have my arms straight out to the side doing a flapping action while I've got the ball in, pressing there. And then I also do like a pressing action. All I'm face down on the floor, pushing a mobility ball into that. And then we're also going to work movements that actually open up the joint range as well. But that soft tissue work is useful to begin with. So move on from that one. I keep going off on sort of probably a little bit too much detail on these, and we don't end up getting through everything. So I think that's 2 of those down. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to the questions. If I can pull up the first one, if I can get this all to work. Let me scroll down. Oh, quite a few in here. Well, thanks for joining in, everybody. Let me just pick something out. So I think there was one from last time. I've just got to spot this. Where is it? Completely lost it. There's too many questions in here. This is good though. Right, let me just pick one. Oh, here it is. This was from last time. So, if the focus of the strength block is to gain strength, what should the conditioning be like? So to explain the difference here, so we've got a strength block of training, kind of talked about this last time, focuses predominantly on building strength. We're still training other qualities as well, but the focus of that block is to build up strength while maintaining the other stuff. That is, if I can just get an image up as well, let me just see if I can do this. Let me just put that up as well. So if I can just take the question off for a moment, if I can do that, hopefully you can see that. So we've got in your training, we've got the resistance training, which is effectively the strength and conditioning. The conditioning is the energy systems, fitness, the endurance, if you like. That endurance is split into two things. There's general conditioning, which is more the central energy production. So that's kind of your heart really keeping up with the energy demands. It's the lungs and the heart, the cardiorespiratory system there to supply energy to the body. And then you've got the local conditioning, which is the muscles themselves using that energy once you've got it from the heart, pumped around the bloodstream and oxygenated blood to those muscles to contract. So normally when we're talking about conditioning, we're talking about the general conditioning most of the time. So what conditioning would go with a strength block? The best option for that, and if I can find another image that will help you kind of visualize all this. Where is it? Too many images. Okay, that one. Oh, that's come out quite small. Let me see it. So there's running from left to right there is kind of a complete fight camp. So we've got on the left-hand end there, mobility and movement. That's the first block that I have. Then we have the functional strength block. Then we have explosive power. And then we have that maximum speed just before a fight. And those descriptions really relate to the resistance training part of the training. We've also got conditioning running alongside that. So I've got, again, I'm not sure if you can see this, but we've got general conditioning and local conditioning, and that sort of shifts the emphasis as you go along. So further from a fight, if we're starting at that movement and mobility block, we're working more on aerobic capacity. So that's the lower intensity, longer duration stuff. And as we get closer to a fight, we shift more to an aerobic power, where we're looking to explode and do repeated sprints and the intensity is higher. Where we are with functional strength is we're more at that aerobic capacity, bordering into aerobic power. So we've still got some of the more steady duration stuff, but we are starting to work some low intensity intervals as well. But you don't want to do too higher intensity at that stage, because you're kind of getting the cart before the horse and you're wasting that adaptation that you need to save right before the fight. So you don't want to play your ace too early. So in a functional strength block, should be some of that steady state stuff. Many people believe that steady state can conflict with strength gains. But just to explain that, when I say steady state stuff, when we're talking longer duration, we're talking 30 minutes up to 60 minutes maximum, no longer than that. If you go longer than that, then you are going to basically limit the amount of strength and power that you can produce in that block. So that's a conflicting adaptation. We don't want those in the same block together. So as long as what you're doing is under 60 minutes, I typically have 30 minutes is what I do with most fighters. That's enough to get that eccentric cardiac hypertrophy I talked about in the last call, actually, the last live one, which is getting that left ventricle to stretch, that's building that volume that you can pump with each heartbeat. And then we're starting to edge into a little bit more higher intensity where we're getting the heart to pump harder. So that's what we should be doing in that strength block. That's the stuff that's going to help you out there. I just want to address as well the local conditioning. So that's what the muscles themselves are doing. That should be aerobic power and alactic capacity. So that's more that sort of strength, the strength side, but with more extended reps. Now, I personally, for fighters, don't tend to overdo the local conditioning. So if I just go back to, where is it? This slide here. So the local conditioning being that bottom one where the muscles themselves are kind of tolerating what's going on. I find that in Muay Thai sessions, most fighters are getting plenty of that. So, you know, most Thai boxers would consider strength and conditioning a few bodyweight bits and pieces at the end of a session, and all the kind of endurance, local muscular endurance work that you're doing in a Muay Thai session, even if it's like multiple kicks and all stuff like that. So I don't tend to add more of that in strength and conditioning because it's already being handled. So we're looking to add things with your strength and conditioning that aren't being taken up elsewhere in your training program. So local conditioning, I tend to stay away from for the best part. There are some special cases, and I do have that in my programs, but most of the time I'm just focusing on general conditioning, and again, bringing adaptations that are going to actually move people forwards and not be something that's just a repeat of what you're already getting. As always, if you can get the fitness adaptation from Muay Thai, then do Muay Thai. That's skill development as well. So let me just see if I can get another question up here. So that's that one. Let me just go on to this one as well, because it kind of marries in. So if you had 2 sessions to train per day, what type of training would you do? Now, so that would depend on what's needed. So 2 sessions per day, my kind of go-to, and I've got another slide here actually, let me get this up and it will help you kind of see the different options. Where is it? No, gone the wrong way. That one. Okay. Let's get that out of the way. So there's an example template that I call the my pro model. So this is a fighter who's able to train twice a day. So down the left-hand side of that table, you've got the days of the week, and then across horizontally, you've got morning and evening or afternoon. So that's really useful. I mean, it's kind of what you do in Thailand as well. You've got a morning training session, a rest period, and then an evening or afternoon training session there. That allows you effectively to have a rest, get some nutrition back on board, so that the later session becomes productive as well, and you're not too fatigued. That's the main thing. We want to sort of squeeze as much progress out of that as we can. So my go-to, my idea would be something like I've got example here on a Tuesday, which would be a high day where I'm really trying to load high. I'd have resistance training in the morning to work those strength, power, speed adaptations, all the neuromuscular stuff. And then in the evening, I'd have my more intense Muay Thai session as well, where it's more sort of fight-paced pad work and sparring and that kind of stuff. Both those sessions together are a pretty high load, and that would end that day with a really strong stimulus, and then that gives me the opportunity the next day, in this instance, because they are big ones, we've got Wednesday as a rest day actually, to just allow the dust to settle. But at the very least, I'd have like a high day and then a low day the next day where it's more technical. Either it's sort of lower intensity cardio and more sort of technical and tactical Muay Thai that next day as well. So I sort of pick days to really overload, and then I pick days to allow some recovery but still get some good quality technical work in as well. So my go-to would be resistance training followed by Muay Thai training, because the Muay Thai is skill and it's also some energy systems cardio conditioning work as well. Otherwise, it would be cardio conditioning with Muay Thai in the evening. And that, again, I'd be targeting something with the cardio conditioning that I wouldn't be getting in the Muay Thai, so I'm making sure I'm overloading something. So hopefully that explains that one okay. Let me get another question up here. So let me just put this one up. So do you think body weight is enough for strength training? Yes and no. Okay, so it's absolutely possible to overload enough with just body weight. But there's only so much you can do. There's limitations in that toolbox. You can work effectively for a while, and then you've actually, your body's adjusted to it. You've actually accommodated it, is the term, and you're not going to adapt anymore. Whereas we can get a lot more progressive overload using free weights, something that can keep knocking on, rather than just changing versions of an exercise. So we've got more room to move there, more options to play with. The other thing I would say is actually, rather than just completely overload, that you can do differently with free weights, because your body weight, you've got to handle your weight. It might be that your body weight for a certain movement is too much, and then actually backing off enough can be a problem to find that right dose of training. So that's again where using some sort of free weight is really useful. You can just dial in to get the right prescription of load for whatever quality it is you're trying to train. So body weight you can use to develop strength, and I have got programs that are doing that, but they're only for sort of limited windows because you run out of room with that. So they're great for a period of time, but for longer term development, other tools are much better to allow you to really squeeze as much as you can out of your training there. So let me move on from that one. Let me just see. Actually, I'll answer this one because I kind of started talking about that a bit as well. So what are your top principles when it comes to strength and conditioning for Muay Thai? So these are the principles of training. So the kind of big one is progression there. So it's making sure that you're progressively moving forwards. And when I talk about progression as well, it's about doing more intensity, more duration, reducing rest intervals, all these kind of things, manipulating the variables, how many times a week you're training, all this kind of stuff, so that you progressively get stronger, fitter, whatever it is you're trying to target with your training. But I'd also say progression includes resting enough. So it's not just about moving forward all the time. It's about knowing when to step back to allow the dust to settle from what you've done to yourself, to let your body actually adapt and adjust to it, so that you've then got fitness to move forwards again. So that would be a big one, progression and getting that right. A lot of fighters are really doing a bad job of that. And that's just getting that right will really help. So as well as progression, we've got overload. So that's making sure that you're not just doing something that your body's already adjusted to. You need to give it something just a little bit more. And it's only just a little bit more. And this is another area that fighters go a bit off tangent. They'll tend to do way more than they need to. So I like to use an analogy of tripwires. So you only need to progress forwards enough to walk through and trip a tripwire to get a fitness adaptation. So once you've tripped that wire, bang, you've got that adaptation. You've got that X% improvement. And it doesn't matter if you just step and just trip it, or whether you step through it and take another 10 steps, you still only trip that one wire. You've only got that much adaptation. But the problem is now, you've moved a lot further forward. Your tripwire now has to go in front of 10 steps ahead. So you've wasted those 10 steps that you could have just put each step another tripwire to make your body get better and better and better. So overload is about not just doing more, but it's only just doing more. That's the secret to kind of long-term progress and not just going round in circles. Another principle, reversibility. So when you stop training, how you lose the progress you made. So it's use it or lose it. And that all depends on what the quality is. So the longer you've been training in quality, the longer it sticks around if you stop training it. If it's only a recently developed one, it diminishes quite quickly. So there's all these kind of training residuals with that as well. But reversibility is one to understand how long you can leave something alone before you need to go back and make sure you're not losing it. And that's why, for fighters in particular, I recommend a conjugate or concurrent training system where we're actually training bits of everything all the time. So nothing's really getting a chance to detrain and disappear. If you kind of used a more of a traditional linear periodization model where you're training certain qualities almost at the exclusion of everything else, other qualities are being lost. And a fighter, you know, we could be fighting in a couple of weeks' time. We can't afford to be slipping that far off the mark. So we're trying to keep an eye on both the long-term progress and the short term, being ready to fight as well if we need to. So that's the kind of big one there. So that reversibility is one to understand. I guess another one would be specificity, would be another big one. So you need to build up general qualities, and as you're further away from the fight and as you get closer to a fight, they need to become more and more specific. If you're doing Muay Thai specific stuff all the time, then again, it's kind of like your body adapts to it and you've played your ace too early. We need to get really specific closer to the fight. And actually there's more general qualities that can be built up to a much higher level that are then really enhance our fight specific stuff if we give it a chance. So we need that to understand that spectrum and have that fight camp. So if I just get that other image back up, actually, if I can just find that. So further from the fight, we're sort of more general. Put this one back up. So if you can see that arrow on the top, we've got general stuff further away from the fight and the specificity, the high Muay Thai specific stuff closer to the fight. If another reason we wouldn't do specific all the time is because it overloads the body in the same way as your training. So all of a sudden, that's a hell of a lot of work that can basically injure you, overuse injuries, all that kind of stuff. So if you're doing it all the time, you're actually asking for problems. So we want to go back to general, build up those raw qualities, give your body actually a bit of a break, as well as get better. And then again, we fine tune it and squeeze that through the funnel, bam, closer to the fight. So they would be my main principles. Hopefully that's answered that one okay. I've only got 5 minutes left. I keep doing this, don't I? Let me just pick another one, very quick one. So, can you replace shuttle runs with 5K runs if you have no fight coming up? So yeah, 5K runs kind of fit into that. I've got the perfect slide up here. Aerobic capacity. It's the lower intensity, longer duration stuff. That fits kind of into that sort of mold there, steady run rather than sort of intermittent sprints and things like that. So yeah, good place to do it further away from the fight. That's in that sort of functional strength block or even a movement and mobility block. That suits that purpose really well. It's not conflicting with anything there. Let me see, what else have we got? I'm starting to knock them off. I think I've answered that one already. Let me go. So this one's a little bit more involved. So obviously someone who's actually training people here, but good one. Right, okay, so what protocols would you use to maximize greater motor unit recruitment? So to explain what that is first. So motor unit recruitment is how efficiently your motor unit system, so it's your brain sending the signals to move, recruit your muscle fibers and contract with force. So it's the electrical volts basically. How many volts can you apply to your muscle cells to actually get them to contract as hard as possible? So a lot of the time, Thai boxers aren't training a hell of a lot of this. They don't overload motor unit recruitment that much. They're kind of working under fatigue and all that blunts that. And that's why in strength and conditioning, we do it with more rest and we're targeting this motor unit recruitment, the neuromuscular side of things, to actually fire the muscle fibers you've got more efficiently. So the more efficiently you can recruit your muscles, the stronger you are, the more powerful you are without being any heavier. We're just making that connection a hell of a lot more efficient. So what protocols would you use? Let me get this up. This will help kind of fill in some blanks. Let me get that question out of the way. So I don't know how well you can all see that. It's quite small on my screen, but that this is a slide I use in my my program webinars, but also if I'm doing seminars with people as well. So it's relative proportion of total motor units involved with training activities. So all the blue stuff on the right doesn't fire much neuromuscular firing. Okay, not many volts are being demanded there. And at the red end, at the other end, there's maximum recruitment of the muscle fibers you've got. There's maximum spark coming from your motor units in your neuromuscular system. So we're contracting more muscle fibers. So the stuff that's on the left-hand end there, you can see there's all like the Olympic lifting and stuff like that, because that's really heavy and explosive. But we've also got the stuff like sprints, okay, interval sprints, maximal sprints with sufficient rest, explosive work with med balls and things like that, and all the plyometric jumps and these kind of things. So when I'm talking about the concurrent training where we've got strength exercises that are kind of fit that middle band there, if you look at that, deadlifts, all these kind of things, squats, they do increase your motor recruitment, but they're nowhere near as juicy as those power movements up the end. So concurrently, we're working all this stuff. So in a strength block where we are working things like deadlifts, we have also got some plyometric work in there as well. So we're working right up that end. And say all of this stuff, this motor recruitment stuff, generally with Thai boxing isn't happening because you can't recruit to this extent if you're fatigued. And most Muay Thai training is about fatigue. So that's where the strength and conditioning, we're looking to plug the gap with that and boost this up so that then you've got more volts to play with when you are fatigued rather than it always just being diminished. And I can see I'm already down to a minute, so I'm waffling on again. Let me see how many of these I can get in. So let me just check. I think I've answered one from most people. Let me just make sure. Probably answered some of that. Let's get this one up. So, favorite general physical preparedness work on an out of camp block. Right. Yeah, so I've got a slide actually that would help just explain this a little bit better very quickly because we're running out of time. And I know there's some more questions in there, and I will be filling these in outside of this. It's because I'm scrolling for these images that I can't see. I think, I haven't even got one. I'm missing a slide. Okay, can't show you that one. What I'm going to do is put that up though. So it's not the one I wanted, but it does help. So another thing we're looking to do here with your training, I like to refer here to Gray Cook's optimal performance pyramid. So the movement qualities are the base of the pyramid, and it should be the biggest kind of competence you've got. We stack on top of that performance. So movement is things like mobility, stability, motor control, all that kind of stuff. Performance, that next tier, is then strength, power, speed, endurance. They're the sort of athletic qualities. But a lot of people spend a lot of time actually getting this out of whack. So the top of the pyramid there is your Muay Thai training. So that's your skill development. That's your very specific skill. And I'd include in that things like balance and agility as well, and timing and reaction. That sort of stuff comes up with sport skill. It's specific to Muay Thai, and you reacting to an opponent. So the performance stuff is more general. The movement stuff is more general again. So exercises or activities that I'd use in a movement block would all be keyed in on mobility and also coordinated movement and stability. They would be my go-tos. And I actually have this example in my optimal fight camp blueprint. I've given this one in there. A Turkish get-up is just, it's plugs all of those gaps in one. So a Turkish get-up, if you can work on that one effectively, then it works mobility. It's great stability in hips, shoulders, everything, and it's a very coordinated movement pattern as well. If you're not moving correctly, there's no way you can stand up with any kind of reasonable load in a straight arm overhead. So very quickly to round up there, because I've realised I've overrun just a little bit again. Turkish get-up would be a really good choice on that, but there are loads of different movements that I would use. But just to sort of round off with that one, let me just get rid of that image. I think I can get that one off. So, oh yeah, gone big again. So hopefully that's been useful for everybody. I've tried to use some slides there to help kind of illustrate as well, because sometimes just waffling on, it's hard to really picture what's going on. So I've spent a bit of time trying to make some slides that I think will fit the screen as well. I'll review this back to see if it did fit and did work. But in the future, if people can submit their questions through the story and live on this one as well, because I see those come up, and say anything that has been missed, I'll try and pick up either at the start of the next one or with something in between now and next time as well. I'm getting thank you from everybody. That's brilliant. Appreciate the feedback there. And I'll do the same next week as well. We're still on lockdown here in the UK, so I haven't got any clients I've got to be away for. So same time next Friday, we'll do the same thing again. And I'll catch up with all of you then. Thanks again for joining me.